Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and Apple released iOS 26.6 RC, or Release Candidate. iOS 26.6 RC is available to developers and public beta testers and should be the final release of iOS 26.6 that's the same as the public release unless there's additional issues. iOS 26.6 supports all iOS 26 supported devices. However, if you're running iOS 27 Beta 4 or Public Beta 2, you won't see the update as you're on a newer version. The only way to install this version would be to use a computer and downgrade. This came in at 8.99 gigabytes on the iPhone 17 Pro Max and was released alongside many other updates: iPadOS 26.6 RC, macOS 26.6 RC, tvOS and HomePodOS 26.6 RC, watchOS 26.6 RC, and visionOS 26.6 RC. We also had the release of iOS 27 Beta 4 and other beta updates with Watch, TV, HomePod, iPad, Mac, and more. Now, as far as the update, let's take a look at the build number and talk about what's new. So if we go into settings, then we'll go to general, then software update, then we'll go to more details, and then we'll take a look at the version number. If we tap on the version number, you'll see the build number is 23G71. If there's no additional issues, this will be the final version released to the public and will have the same build number. If we do have issues, we will see a new build number, or if there's even more issues, we could see an iOS 26.6 RC2, but I don't really expect that this late. But we'll have to wait and see. As far as new features, well, there is no modem update coming from the last beta, Beta 5, to the RC. However, if you're coming from iOS 26.5.2, you could see an update there, depending on what version you're installing from. So that could help with overall connectivity if you're having issues with that. As far as visible new features, there's nothing here to see physically. There's really no changes that we're seeing here, but there is one thing that Apple is preparing for. If we take a look at the release here, you'll see it says it includes bug fixes, security updates, and optimizes the Spotlight Index to prepare for iOS 27. This is basically confirming this is the end of the line for iOS 26. We probably won't see another update after this. We could, but typically we won't, as Apple's preparing for iOS 27 that we expect later this year, and we'll talk about when to expect that a little bit later in the video. The only other thing we know is in this update has to do with contacts. If you have a ton of contacts, and maybe you block a lot of contacts, there seems to be a hard limit of 3,000 blocked contacts now. Once you hit that limit, it will give you a little screen letting you know, or a little pop up that tells you that you've hit a limit there. Typically, you won't have that many blocked contacts, but if you do, there seems to be a hard limit with that. There is no mention of what was in the code earlier in this particular update, and what I mean by that is under security, there was mention in the code that there could be a new feature that has to do with stolen device protection, where someone tries to take it out of your hands, it would sense that and then lock the display. Maybe they're waiting for iOS 27 with this, but so far we're not seeing it in iOS 26 in the code or anything else right now. So they haven't announced it. We don't know of any features with that, but maybe they'll bring it in a future update. As far as anything else we can see, well, I did have two splash screens basically, one going into games here. So you'll see it says what's new in Apple Games, never played library filter, basically features we already know about. I also had one where I went into Safari, then went down and into my tabs, and there was a little indicator here telling me I could swipe up to go into tabs. So again, that's not really new, but it was showing up in iOS 26.6. Now, we do expect some other features as far as enterprise features or bug fixes. Apple hasn't specified what they are, so I do expect those. I also expect some security updates. So typically Apple doesn't publish the security updates until it's released to the public, but I do expect some after it releases. Usually within an hour or so, we'll see that update. But that's what we normally see, but we don't see it just yet. As far as bugs and bug fixes, while there was a note that they fixed an issue where a region was previously selected and how it would be applied, that's more on the back end. And also they fixed the Respring Bug. And what that means is if we go to the home screen and edit, then tap on a widget, tap back off the widget, tap the page dots at the bottom, that would respring or reboot the interface of the device. We're not seeing that with this, and it looks like it's been resolved. So that's great news. Also, it seems like it could have fixed CarPlay. However, we don't know that for sure, as it usually takes a few days until it starts to act up again. Hopefully it fixed the disconnect reconnect bug that many people were having, where it would disconnect, reconnect, and do that over and over. In fact, I had an issue where it did that probably 5 times within 30 minutes before. Hopefully it resolves it again. We'll test that over a few days and talk about it in the weekend follow-up. Also, hopefully it seems to have finally fixed the wallpaper bug. You'll see it's nice and vibrant here. Swipe home, and it stays vibrant. Now, I did see this fixed in the first couple betas of iOS 27 as well, but then it returned later on. So we don't know if this is permanently fixed. It seems to come and go depending on what wallpaper you have set. As far as other bugs, well, they haven't really mentioned a whole lot here, but if we go to the release notes, you'll see on the public facing release note website, view release notes here. If we go into this, there's a couple things they resolved as far as code with HealthKit, messages. They fixed HDR screenshots that might appear garbled when sent in messages. They've also resolved object capture issues, sticker issues from earlier betas, and a store kit issue as well. But they're not telling us of any other bug fixes, whether that's to battery life, to overall processor, or anything else. But basically, it's preparing Spotlight Search for indexing on iOS 27. So it looks like they're really pushing full strength into iOS 27, and they'll probably not support it after it releases to the public since iOS 27 supports all iOS 26 devices. The other thing they updated today was the Sports app. If we go into the App Store, and within Apple Sports, you'll see that they've updated it to version 4.2. And if you're using this, they've added additional features. It says coming out of the World Cup 2026, there's more soccer ahead, so fans around the world can keep up with their favorite leagues. It says they're adding Belgian Pro League, Danish, Dutch, Japanese, Polish, Scottish, and the Swiss Super League. Also, you'll now be able to see formations across most soccer leagues, making it easier to visualize the starting lineup for each match. So if you haven't updated that already, make sure you update it, as they've added some additional features there. As far as when to expect the public release, well, typically I would expect it to release next Monday, probably on the 27th if there's no additional issues. And then when to expect the next beta for iOS 27, I would expect iOS 27 Beta 5 on August 3rd or sometime around that point. I don't think we'll see another iOS 26 update with 26.7. It's possible, but since this one is preparing for iOS 27, we'll probably have betas throughout August, a few in September, or maybe an RC in September, and a public release usually mid-September around the next iPhone launch. So that's what I would expect going forward. We'll slow down with iOS 26 updates, and of course, all of the focus shifts to iOS 27. If you're wondering if you should install iOS 26.6 RC, well, if you're on any of the iOS 26.6 betas, absolutely. If you're on iOS 26.5.2, this should be the public release, so you can try it out. If not, you'll have another update once it releases to the public. But either way, at this point, it should be safe to try. But again, as always, make sure you have a backup, and just be aware that if you needed to restore, you need a computer to do that. But other than that, it seems to be pretty solid so far. When it comes to performance, again, very, very smooth, super smooth scrolling. 120 hertz ProMotion is nice. If we lock, unlock, swipe up, scroll over, that's where it would lag before. So far, it's nice and fast. Sometimes it can degrade over time, but it seems like it's much better. Opening the apps is fast, going into the camera, going into music, things are loading fast, going into podcasts, scrolling, everything seems to be nice and smooth. And again, this could slow down over a few days, but we'll have to see how RAM management is and things like that over a few days. When it comes to overall heat and thermals, it's staying nice and cool, just like it did in previous betas. It's actually much cooler than it was before, and cooler than iOS 27 as well. So it's staying nice and cool to the touch, no issues there, no overheating so far. And when it comes to battery life, many people are reporting great battery life. Now, I've been using iOS 27 full time, so let me share battery life from someone else. So thanks to Connor for sending this in. This is on an iPhone 17 Pro Max with iOS 26.6 Beta 5. Of course, the RC will take a few days, but so far, excellent battery life. 4 hours and 47 minutes of screen active time, 29 minutes of screen idle time using only 46% of the battery. So it's doing quite well, much better than previous versions of iOS 26. It could degrade over time, but so far it's looking great. When it comes to the overall storage usage, let's go ahead and take a look at that quickly. We'll go to General and then iPhone Storage and scroll to the bottom. You'll see it's using 21.97 gigabytes. Now, I'll also compare this with iOS 27. You'll see that here on the left with iOS 27 Beta 4 that uses much more storage and more Apple Intelligence. It's more Apple Intelligence heavy, so it's going to use more, but this just gives you a general idea compared to both versions. As far as anything else, well, let's take a look at benchmarks as they've been pretty great on this version. I ran them earlier, and despite this being an RC where it just installed and of course is processing in the background, we have 3,825 for single core, 10,046 for multi-core. Typically, it will take a few days before it will let you ramp up to 10,000. This happened right away. So performance-wise, it seems like it's doing great. It's not a huge update, and there's not a whole lot more to talk about with iOS 26.6. Again, it's getting us ready for iOS 27, so it's not very feature heavy, but should fix some bugs until iOS 27 releases. If you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, I'll link it in the description like I normally do. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.